Wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Today we would like have class with Professor Dr. Muhammad Febriansyah from USM, Malaysia. And for student, I hope you already have opportunity to read some article related to this topic for today visiting lecture. And of course, this topic, democracy, assistance, and civil society, is a very, what to say, urgent and very important topic in our democracy process during this time. Yeah, I mean, we experience in Indonesia the lack of civil society role in our political affair led to the problem of repressive or authoritarian regime during Suharto era, for example. So we lack of civil society, and basically Malaysia through Mahathir Mohamad, Anwar Ibrahim, contribute to the spreading of civil society discourse in Indonesia and mostly in Southeast Asia countries. So today we already have 16 students, more or less. And today we have opportunity, very great opportunity to have lecture with Dr. Febri. And again, Pak Febri, I would like to say thanks very much for your kindness and your uh, 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 your kindness to support our program in international government class here at UMY. And before start, I will give opportunity to my assistant, Mr. Bubu, to lead this visiting lecture and make it simple. And I mean, yeah, like I hope Febri, you will have time to share and to support this student understanding on the issue, I mean on civil society. So thank you, and please, Mas Bubu, to lead this forum. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Pak David, for opportunity to lead this discussion. A very good one, class. And nice to meet you again, Prof. Febri, Dr. Febri from USM, Malaysia.
Yeah, so, nice to meet you too.
Yeah. So today Pak Febri will explain about democracy, assistance, and civil society. I hope all students have questions and having lively discussions this time. Please use your opportunity to ask regarding this material because this is very interesting. Absolutely. And yeah, I think to make it shorter, I will give this time to Pak Febri. The place is yours to explain. Thank you, Pak.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak David Effendi and Alim Bubu. Yeah, here we go again. My second class about this and the subject of the civil society. Last week we discussed about the uncivil society. I hope it's useful for you to understand for the whole subject of civil society, to look into different groups or different elements of civil society. Yes, I remember last time I asked Pak Alim Bubu to forward to you 2 articles. One is from James Petras. James Petras is well known for the his leftist leaning perspective into looking at the civil society, as he coined the term the serf for imperialism. Actually, when I provide this slide for today, I don't refer to the James Petra's work, the article that I asked you to read. But I hope it can spark the discussion. You will have a little bit, insight about what is democracy assistance. And of course, the object itself is civil society. And like I mentioned before, civil society is a very broad concept, but people mostly referring to the actors, which is NGO. And one of the scholars says that democracy assistant actually contribute to the NGOization of civil society, which is mean that if you see at the point of time when in particular country the civil society organizations, CSO or NGOs is mushrooming because of the local political development, then it's because one of the factors to make it happen is because of democracy assistance. Then I don't know, I just wondering whether you as a student have encounter about or known about these terms, democracy assistance. Some use another terms and use interchangeably with the democracy promotion. It's very much related with the foreign funding. For if any NGO activists, they always, if you study about the LSM or NGOs, one of the topic that might interest you maybe is how do NGOs operate? Where do they get the money from for their operations? And of course, in order to survive or for the smoothness of the operation of every NGOs, they need the fund. Democracy assistance provide one of the source for the fund for the civil society organizations, even though they have many other channels, like even though that CSO is non-benefit, not profit-oriented, but sometimes they can also do trading. You got to some activities that can generate incomes, which is a good thing. But the thing is, like what James Petra says, many NGOs, not only in Indonesia, but this is the phenomenon that take place in all over the world, especially in the developing countries. Most of the NGOs, sometimes they only rely their funding from the foreign donors, which is part of democracy assistance. That's we want to discuss today. So as I mentioned before, I just got this picture from one of the research. But how to explain this? I try to use my own understanding how to explain. You can see that there is a development aid, democracy promotion, democracy assistance, and promotion of democratizations. The researchers who made this picture maybe have different specific explanations. But if you can see that the bigger picture from the democracy promotion or democracy assistance is the development aid. So democracy promotion itself and the democracy assistance itself is very US government foreign policy. It's part of the US government foreign policy. I will have a definition in the next slides. But actually, like Germany, democracy promotions has been in place earlier before, even before the World War II, like Stiftung. If you ever heard about the Frederick Norman's Stiftung, Frederick Norman Foundation, Frederick Ebert, Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. If you work with the NGOs or you study about the NGOs, these are the names that very well known. Because if you want to involve in NGOs and you want to propose any specific program, then you will approach these international institutions who are always giving money to any NGOs, mostly in the authoritarian countries or dictatorship, the country is still undemocratic, or in transition into the democracy. So I think Indonesia since 90s, even long before that, since 70s, like we had NGOs like LP3AS, YLBHI, Bina Desa. Some of them still exist until today. They work with the grassroots communities. Sometimes they campaign for the human rights, for developmental project, and etc. So these NGOs working together, and international funders like Stiftung, Frederick Norman, Frederick Ebert, they need a partner when they want to further their programs in the foreign land or foreign countries like Indonesia. They need a partner, and always the partner is, if not governments, agencies, then they work closely with the NGOs. So they provide the money, and the local partners, the local NGOs, will run the program. So that's the thing. Only in 80s, US itself emphasized or saying that what they've done before is a form of a democracy promotion. You know, the US involvement in many regime change in third world countries, in Latin America, even in Indonesia in 1965. What happened, the topple down of Sukarno and the rise of Suharto at the time was part of the US foreign policy. Maybe CIA involved. If you read a book by Wijaya Herlambang, the Kekerasan Budaya tahun 1965 di Indonesia, we published it in 2016, I think. It shows how several of Indonesian intellectual elites trained and funded by US agencies, by Ford Foundation, Rand corporations. They train in the US, give them good educations, PhD, etc. And after the regime change in Indonesia during the Orde Baru, they become policymakers. They become a technocrat. And of course, some will easier for us to accuse that they are bring the US agenda within their policy. That's why one of the authors call Indonesia as a fourth country, which is mean that all of the policies that are imposed by the intellectual and all of the elites who make the policy, they're trained by the US, funded by US, the education funded by the US, mostly by the Ford Foundation. You know, the Ford Foundation, I think, is for those who have, intention, want to further their studies abroad. Ford Foundation is still providing scholarship, I think. But the history of the Ford Foundation itself, especially in Indonesia, one of the criticism says that Indonesia is a fourth country, which is mean that how Ford at the time during 60s, I think they accused also being tools for the CIA. If you learn, put aside the conspiracy theory, the CIA role in terms of, I think we are familiar with that. But some of the scholars research as well shows that yes, CIA involved. They are not using their own flag, but they are using other funders institution like foundations, CCF, cultural, CCF, forget the name, USAID, USAID. So some new data has been revealed by some scholars about the role of the CIA inside these government agencies or foundations that give money to the minority elites from the third world countries or former colonized countries, give them educations, and after that, maybe they have a agenda, liberalization, of course, liberalization of economy. That's what happened in Indonesia during the New Order. Okay, then of course in the US itself, they have transformed. You know that the rulers, the government changed in the US from Reagan, Bill Clinton, Bush. They have a different approach or different perspective in their foreign policy. Like for instance, Donald Trump actually, they don't really care about the democracy promotion because they want to look very inward looking, different from the Bush during the Bush administrations, when their main foreign policy was to war against terrorism. And war against terrorism is is a part of democracy promotion as well, from the US perspective or US foreign policy perspective. Okay, so we always says that NGO is important for the democratizations. They highlight some key important issues to democratize the society or the countries, and they got money from the foreign funding. They got money from the foreign institutions. You name it, USAID, Frederick Ebert Stiftung or other Stiftungen from Germany, NED, National Endowment for Democracy from the US. NED is private run but funded by the government of the US, different from the USAID. And so what was the difference and what role they play? I will try to explain later. So in many other state agencies in the Western itself, like Sweden, they have SIDA for development aid misalnya, atau Canada, CIDA, Canada International Development Aid. Many other agencies from the foreign country, mostly in the Western, they provide fund of development to the third world, or country that still in the transition into the consolidation of democracy. So just look at the definition of a democracy transition. It may define in many ways, but it generally encompasses foreign policy activities intended to encourage the transition to or improvement of democracy in other countries. US democracy promotion assistance refers to US program description and funding levels for democracy promotion activities to advance freedom and dignity by assisting governments and citizens to establish, consolidate, and protect democratic institutions, process, and values, including participatory and accountable governance, rule of law, authentic political competition, civil society, human rights, and the free flow of information. So this last sentence means that some of the fields or some of the field that covered by the democracy assistance, rule of law, authentic competition, civil society is one of them, and human rights, of course, the one who always promote the issue is also civil society groups, who specifically campaigning for the human rights or advocating the human rights issues. And also free flow of information. Many journalist association, like for instance in Indonesia at the end of the New Order era in the 1990s, there was AJI, Aliansi Jurnalis Indonesia, because at the time the only journalist associations that allow to be exist is only PWI, Persatuan Wartawan Indonesia, and it's co-opted by the New Order. But the AJI is the new institutions that try to bring issue of the free of flow of informations, and AJI still exists until today. And at the beginning, they got funded. They got funded. At the same time, I think it's ISAI. If you read one of my article, it's in Malay that I should read, because I explain these organizations like AJI, ISAI, or maybe Utan Kayu communities. If you are familiar with the Utan Kayu communities in Jakarta, Salihara, which is the prominent leaders is Gunawan Muhammad. He's one of the one of the prominent actors in terms of the recipient of the democracy assistance in Indonesia. The linkage. If you read the Wijaya Herlambang books, you understand the role of the person like Gunawan Muhammad, how they got the money, because he's darling of the foreign assistance, foreign funding. It's easier for him to get the money from the foreign funding. So I hope by this definition you can get the little bit picture about what is the democracy promotion of democracy assistance itself. So can we call this as intervention? Does U.S. government has any specific agenda? As we know that it's always been like that, that U.S. always intervene any political local politics in any countries, even though they support the Indonesia New Order regime, and we also know the Suharto era is not democratic, but they work close together, and nothing to say about the human rights issue, about what happened in 1965, many other, because Suharto protect the capital from the US and other Western countries. So Thomas Carothers is one of the, I think, is the gurus for the democracy assistance. If you do a research or do writing about the democracy assistance, you cannot avoid to quote or read of his work, Thomas Carothers. Now his work in the Carnegie Foundations. Carnegie also one of the foreign funders. So he defined democracy assistance as aid specifically designed to foster a democratic opening in a non-democratic country, or to further democratic transition in a country that has experienced our democratic opening. Sometimes it's not necessarily that democracy assistance is trigger democratization in the non-democratic countries, but sometimes it's only follow the trend. After, like what happened, let's say in Egypt or Arab Spring, the foreign funding is pouring just after the regime's collapse, not before that. But yeah, there was also the case when the Soros initiate to give funding to the rebels in the Eastern Europe. Before the collapse of Union Soviet, before the collapse of the Berlin Wall, before the collapse of the dictatorship or authoritarianism in Eastern Europe in 1980s. So George Soros is contribute much, because George Soros, I will explain later specifically about George Soros, but his foundation, Open Society Foundation, I think one of the biggest funders for undemocratic countries. So if you involve in civil society movement in undemocratic countries, then OSF or George Soros will happily give you money to do something or to make democratization is possible in your country. This Sarah Bush is another scholars who work intensely about this topic. He also categorized economic sanctions and rewards as a part of the democracy promotion as well. So you have to bear in mind that democracy promotion is not only funding that you get from foreign agencies or foreign states to NGOs, but government also one of the recipients. You must understand that. Like in the Indonesian government institution or Indonesian agency like KPK, KPK, KPU, in their earlier formations, they got support from AUSAID, Australia Aid funding. So the recipient of the democracy promotion is not only civil society elements, but also government. Must understand. That's why Sarah Bush categorized economic sanction and reward also part of the democratic promotion, which is mean that when the US government take the stern action against the junta military in Myanmar today, it's also part of the democratic assistance, because or give sanctions to the North Korea. From the US perspective, this also part of the democracy assistance. Diplomatic pressure and military interventions. I give you one example. The best example is what happened in Myanmar right now, when the US pressure the junta military regimes. It's part of the democracy assistance as well. The democracy promotions to promote and support the protesters in US. And of course, some of people will say that this is interventions. We anti-US, and US also have their own interests, like what happened in Iraq, or what happened in Afghanistan, or what happened in Libya when the US talk about the democracy. This kind of things, we can suspect that US also have their own interests when they promote certain NGOs to promote the certain campaign, whether it's human rights or even LGBT. They have their own agenda, especially still in the undemocratic countries, where the regime change is sometimes is an ideal situations. When Soros give money to the rebel or oppositions in the Eastern Europe, of course the main goal is regime change, to open up, to topple down the communist leaders and open up the society and go to the democratizations. Although it still has its place, democracy assistance, which I define as an aid given with the explicit goal of advancing democracy overseas, is one of the most visible facets of post-Cold War democracy promotions. And today, Western states spends billions of dollars annually with the aim of advancing democracy, human rights, and good governance abroad, whereas they spend virtually nothing on that goal in 1980s. They do so through programs that, among other things, teach civic educations, support civil society groups, give them money, train the media, and encourage women to run for political office. So actually, Western or country that have agency that support for the democracy all over the world, they have a priority agenda. Like, let's say, maybe in Indonesia, war on terrorism is one of them, one of the priority for the last decade. Before that is democratizations. Before, let's say, that after reformasi is the strengthening the democratic institutions, like KPU, what else? Mahkamah Konstitusi, KPK. So this new democratic institution need to be supported, right? but that's not their priority right now. They have changed their priority to, let's say, all over the world, the hot issue is LGBT campaign, refugee, refugee, especially maybe because of what happened in Europe for the last decade, and then refugee, LGBT, war and terrorism. I think still, of course, poverty in certain countries, and they also have criteria which country that they have to focus on. Of course, during the regime change or in the time of the transitions from the undemocratic to the democratizations, that will become their main focus. Usually after the regime change in one authoritarian countries, what happened next was the elections, the first democratic elections, right? How the Western funders support this? Of course, the training for the ad hoc, like Indonesia is KPU, or election monitoring team, election monitoring atau pengawas pemilu, like in 1999 election in Indonesia, there was so many foreign election monitor groups come to see the first democratic election in Indonesia in 1999. One of them is a Carter Center. Carter is a former US president, and he has his own NGOs, Carter Centers, and he always travel around the world to watch or to oversight the elections in post-authoritarian country elections. Okay. Now, I don't know whether you are familiar with these agencies. There is the Asia Foundation. As I mentioned about the Stiftungen Hendrik Bol Stiftung, I think one of the most familiar is three: Frederick Ebert, Frederick Naumann, and Konrad Adenauer. Stiftung. So during the 70s, like Frederick Ebert or Frederick Naumann, if I'm not mistaken, their support activities of LP3AS. LP3AS, I think, still active today. One of the earliest NGO that formed in Indonesia in 1970s, and it published Prisma. Have you read Prisma during the New Order 80s and 90s? I think this is, and still published today, and still ongoing. Prisma is one of the journal that always been referred for Indonesian studies. It was funded by the Frederick Naumann, of whether Frederick Naumann or Frederick Ebert, I've forgotten. So Frederick Stiftungen, what we call it is in Germany, Stiftungen means foundations, mean yayasan. Right? So what we call is a Stiftungen. If we talk about Stiftungen, we are referring to 6 Stiftungen institution: Hendrik Bol, Frederick Naumann, Hans Riedel, Rosa Luxemburg, Konrad Adenauer, and Frederick Ebert, and other Stiftungens. This is very interesting. You can have a specific study on the Germany institutions. Then we have the Asia Foundation, also is NGOs, but funded by the US government. When like NED as well, NED, National Endowment for Democracy, it has several organisasi di bawahnya. The most famous one is NDI and IRI, because NDI is affiliated with the Democrat Party, and IRI is affiliated with the Republican Party, and they also have different approach. Like NDI is more, the approach is more to the civil society groups, but IRI, they are more to give training to the new political party. So it gives democratic system IRI focus on the political party, like how to increase the participation of the women in the political parties, how to make women pass to the parliament, things like that. So they have the democratic assistant. They will share the experience, in other countries. And the thing is, they have a training workshop, and their main goal is to help the political party to compete in the new environment in the democratic consolidation in particular country. Now, Ford Foundation, I mentioned about how he support the intellectual elites with educations, and I'm sure that it also funding other specific program. And USAID, what the difference USAID and NED? USAID and NED are the biggest US related government agencies to give the fund to the civil society groups in foreign countries. But USAID is a government agencies, but NED is a private agency, private organizations, but get funded from the US government, which is mean that they are accountable. Which is mean that where this organization give the money by the state, which is mean that the tax from the common people, tax from the US people will go to the state, and state allocate some money for democracy promotions, and the number is billions. With that, they have to accountable to the state and also to the people of the US. The same thing goes to happen in the Germany. Japan Foundation also is a private institutions. Open Society Foundation is the biggest, not only private biggest funders, but also the biggest funders. It's outnumbered USAID and NED. Then the money that they spend for the democracy and human rights in under the part of the world is the biggest one. The Carter Centers also, I think, is a very familiar with Indonesia, because it is playing very important role during the 1999 elections in Indonesia, the first democratic election after 32 years, I think. So as you can see, hundreds of them, not only institutions, but like philanthropy, just like Melinda Gates and Bill Gates foundations, even though they are not directly give money to the NGOs that works in the politics, like Bill Gates is give money to the eradicate famine in Africa, let's say. It's not really political, but yeah, this part of the democracy promoters or democracy assistant as well. So little bit about the history. Like before before US promote the democracy assistance, the Steve Tunjung have played a central role in spreading the idea of democracy since before World War II. They also play a key role in assisting in the transition process in Spain, Portugal, and Chile during 70s. What happened in Chile, Spain, and Portugal, and become model for promoting democracy that later was adopted by other European countries and by the US. And the Steve Tunjung model was embraced by the NED, which formed later in 1982, and assumed an important place among non-state actors during the Cold War and post-Cold War periods. So Steve Tunjung is very interesting because it has a model. All of these institutions, Freddie Ebert, Frederick Norman, Conrad, and other, each of these Steve Tunjung are closely affiliated with the political party that exists in Germany today. Which is mean that how much money they got from the national budget, it depends how well their political party performs in the parliament. So I'm not sure whether this Christian Democrat Party, their Steve Tunjung, whether it's Frederick Norman or Frederick Ebert or Konrad Adenauer, but things like that lah. But you know that if you read the history of the Germany itself, why they are really keen to spread the idea of democracy, you know, because of their own history within Nazism, the idea of openness, then that's the main motivations why they want to help other countries that still undemocratic. So I think this is the one of the motivations why these funders want to give their money to open the undemocratic society. Okay. Now we can separate, or we can classify two democracy promoters. First is state actors, which is bound by diplomatic code and tend to place great emphasis on regime-compatible approach in democracy promotions. So most of the state actors, like I mentioned, like US aid, or AUS aid, Australia aid. So this is the, because they are official government agency, so they cannot go deep into do some program that can you know, make confrontation with the host government or host rulers. So because it will break the diplomatic code, you know, it's not ethic if you are agency from the US, then you give money to NGOs that always critical to the Indonesian government. So Indonesian government will attack US because they are funded the critical NGO their own countries. So that's why this is non-actors focus on non-regime compatible approach, which is mean that if one NGO like LBH or many NGOs works like while he what else? LBH that always promote the always criticize the government. They are more keen to get money from the non-state actors agencies. The opening democratic space and democratization of democratic movement in countries. So I only have about half an hour before our class finish, but I try to finish before that. If you have any question, just go ahead, right? Non-state actors complement the role of state actors in the promotion of democracy because of several reasons. Here I list some of them. Because non-state actors, we are talking about the international funders, non-state actors, international funders like NED, OSF, Ford foundations. We are not talking about the US aid, or AUS aid, or maybe also kedutaan. Most of the, what you call it, kedutaan in English, like Swedish kedutaan Swedia
embassy,
like embassy, Swedish embassy in Jakarta, because Swedia is one of the prominent democracy promoters as well. The embassy in Jakarta will support any specific NGOs that working in certain issues that related with their own agendas. Not only Sweden, Canada, Finland. So they will give money to the NGOs. Because of why non-state actors very important, because they can explore area of democracy that cannot be explored by the state actors due to sensitivity and diplomatic factors. Because when the official government agencies involve or openly support oppositions from the civil society, and maybe they can get the persona non grata, things like that. And non-state actors are closer to the grassroots, and those capable of developing social capital that adds value to political participation. Like Steve Tunjin, who which NGO that they give money to, like LP3IS. Yes, because LP3IS working with the rural communities, and they work in the grassroots. Or Bina Desa, misalnya. Bina Desa is one of the old Indonesian NGOs. Non-state actors can function as an alternative funder, regarded as a magic bullet for grassroots movement facing red tape problems imposed by state actors when acquiring assistance. OSF is more loose with the regulation, with the syarat-syarat. It's easier, based on my own observation, it's easier to get the money from the OSF because it's one of the biggest funders, and it, the syarat-syarat, the conditions to get the money from the institution like OSF, it's more easier compared to you apply for a grant from other institution, mostly from the government-funded institution from the foreign countries lah. And once the actors become agent of promotion, track 2 diplomacy, track 1, track 2 diplomacy is the term in international relations, that track 1 is government to government, and track 2, also known as the grassroots diplomacy, the people diplomacy, and informal diplomacy. So the role of the non-state actors is complementary to the state actors. Okay, I give you one of the examples of George Soros Open Society Foundations. Was founded in the idea of a free society. If you want to know more about the free society, I just want to give you a hint that George Soros is his teacher is Karl Popper. Karl Popper wrote a book about the open society. And he is very inspired by the open society and free society because his background itself. George Soros is a Jewish from Hungary. You know how Jewish communities in Europe is always been, oppressed, and then in Hungary is a part of the Eastern Europe that's under authoritarianism during the Cold War, and because of that, at the same time, he is a very successful money speculant that has been accused as a penyebab, as a reason why we experienced of economic crisis in 1997. When the economic crisis hit Asia in 1997, I'm sure that you are not born at the time. You were not born at the time. The hardship that we face, some of the leaders in Asia point the fingers to Soros because he made, he plays speculation with the money market and then make the crisis economy at the time. But he is very generous, give money to the people, and his first project is giving funding to anti-apartheid group in South Africa in before 1994. Even though that, but he's always well known because of his contribution to support pro-democracy movement in the former European countries in the late 80s. So total budget he spent for the democratic practice and human rights, economic government, equality and innovation, health and right, education, journalism, information and justice reform, $1 billion. This is the bigger than USAID budget and the bigger than NED budget. And the total expenditure he has already spent since 1982, 15 billion. So that's why George Soros is when something happened in particular country, maybe he is involved. I give you examples like what happened in Myanmar just now, in current situation in Myanmar. The junta military accused George Soros funding for the unrest. This happened everywhere. I mentioned about the Komunitas Hutan Kayu, Jaringan Islam Liberal in Indonesia. You know, Hutan Kayu, Jaringan Islam Liberal, ISAI, Institut Studi Arus Informasi, AJI, Aliansi Jurnalis Indonesia. So this organization is under one roof in Salihara in Jakarta. His prominent leaders is Gunawan Muhammad. So when Gunawan Muhammad established this institution, Jaringan Islam Liberal, even the Ulil Absor, one of the leaders of Jaringan Islam Liberal NGOs, is his education funded by the Ford Foundation, or USAID, funded by USAID. And GIL itself is funded by the Soros. So you can see what agenda behind it, or what the agenda behind it. Of course, by Soros, he wants the open society. He wants to liberalize Indonesian society or any other society in the unliberal or in non-liberal society. So it happened in Myanmar right now. It happened in Russia. It happened in Iran during the 2009 Green movement. It also happened in Hong Kong with the Umbrella movement. Yeah, we don't know what happened in Thailand or bubble tea alignment. That just new phenomenon in the grassroots movement in Asia today. I'm sure that Soros will have interest to that. He will give money to the opposition groups that against the undemocratic regime. Just for, I'm not go specifically to the figures, but you can see that the numbers quite increasing. This is democracy assistance funded by the US government since 2006 until 2017. And more than 2 billion annually has been allocated from foreign assistance funds for democracy promotion activities, including support for good governance. Remember that if US military, let's say that have a simulation, latihan militer bersama to the Indonesian army, that's part of the democratic assistance. That's part of the democracy promotions. Because as I mentioned before, the recipient for the democracy promotion is not only civil society organization, but also government, political party, and the form of democracy assistance itself is not always money, cash, or financial support, but also another form of support. I will explain later. So yeah, I just want to skip this to show you how the democracy assistance is always increasing every year since 80s. Yeah, this is what kind of the assistance provided by democracy assistance. It's not only financial or grant or money. It also can be a form of the technical assistance, like I mentioned about the latihan bersama military simulation with the US military training with the Indonesian. It can become a part of technical assistance as well. Funding for the educations and campaign support. Let's say that Human Rights Watch, one of the international NGOs on human rights issue that based in New York, they always support campaigning for Indonesian human rights support, human rights campaigns. So that can become of assistance, democracy assistance as well. And the financial, you must remember that it's not always like Soros give you money, transfer his money to your NGO account. It's not like that. You have to, apply for you must write a proposal, plan the programs for the let's say for the 1 year, 2 years, and what you want to do, and how much money you need, and if that your application is approved, and it will you get the grant. Actually, you asking for a grant, not asking for the financial support. Okay? You're asking for the grant. Grant means that you must run a program, a specific program. That's why when, let's say, WALHI or any other environments, NGOs in Indonesia want to get money from the, let's say, Soros or SF, then you have to focus on the environmental issue. You cannot use that money. If you get the money, you cannot use that money to run a program related to the human rights or educations or animal rights. No. And you have to accountable yourself. You have to accountable. You have to make a report to your funders. And I have mentioned before, government and political party, in the post-authoritarian countries, when the dictatorships fell down and the new democratic political environments came into exist, normally we will witness many other new political party. So some of the actors of this political party, sometimes they don't have any expertise. They don't know how to run a party. They don't know how to stand in the elections. So institutions like IRI, International Republican Institute, they will tell you, they will give a training, give a workshop, how to do a campaign, how to to manage the fundraiser and things like that. So that's kind of democracy assistance that political party always get. Sometimes they get the money as well. And I explain really much about civil society organizations. So if you read the James Petra's article, now this is sometimes the reality. This is only one perspective how to see where the money goes. Sometimes when the funders give money to the specific NGOs to run project about in the community, sometimes this happen. Not only democratic promotion aid, but development aid, mostly the development aid. Let's say that USAID have a program to make sanitations in the one of the rural kampung in Java, let's say in Jawa Tengah or in Jakarta. Maybe it has million money to spend, and it has through the NGOs. I don't want to say that the NGO sometimes corrupts, but sometimes, like I mentioned before, one of the scholars saying that democracy assistance is contribute to the NGOization of political society, which is mean that if you know that if I know USAID want to looking for a partner or NGOs that can run a project of sanitation in kampung in Jakarta, why not I will form or I'll establish one of the NGOs that, and then I will write a proposal that I will get the money, then I will run the project. So that's the one of the practice that I was negative side that NGOs always been accused of. I give you one example. NGOs become more careerism, become more career. Many people involved, or if you have a student activist background, you have a good networking with the elites or with the NGOs circle, you know how it works. Then you want to become the NGO people to run an NGO. You can form your own NGOs, and you just do your homework. What issue that really being prioritized by the funders today? Like I mentioned, now the priority is refugees, LGBT, Why not I form NGOs that campaigning for the LGBT communities? My main target is to get the funding from the NGOs. If I get funding, I have an opportunity to go to the overseas, attending conference, meeting with the international communities. I can build up my profile, things like that. And like what James Petras have written in that article. Even though that my NGO is working with the poor community, but most of the time, I spend my time in the in the hotel, in the international conference, in overseas, not with my own community that I supposed to advocate or I supposed to help. So that's that thing about the NGOs, but not all NGOs works like that. And many NGOs, I'm sure that sometimes they can reject, or they are not want to asking money from the foreign funders. They will rely to the another sources. I know that some of the NGOs they are not really willing to accept money from the foreign funders because they know that they still have agenda behind that. So like one of the government agencies like Densus 88, that I was involved in the terrorism preventive or terrorism related. It because US government give a prioritize to war on terrorism. So US government give much money to country like Indonesia, to government in Indonesia, to help form a special task force to overcome the terrorism issue. And it's not only that, Indonesian parliament also was allowed about the terrorism. It's part of democratic assistance and part of the agenda itself. So yeah, this is my last slide, I think. This is one of the example how this is clearly about the LGBT. That this is a very sensitive issue maybe in the Muslim majority countries, even though that I'm more neutral about it. USAID funding and UNDP funding some of the Indonesian NGOs to do a campaign. And UNDP project actually is not only Indonesia. Indonesia is only one country that they are focusing on. But from one of the report from the newspaper, I read that the funding that they give money to the LSM is 8 million. 8 million atau sekitar 100 miliar. That's a huge of money. How many NGOs get that money? So that's some say that this is a positive because you promote, because you advocate the marginalized communities. Some says that there's a agenda behind it. Of course, because the US want to liberalize or westernize every societies in the world. So you can nilai lah. You can just give a justification to that. So I think that's all for me. I'm sure that many things that we can discuss already. I don't know whether this subject is really new for you or maybe you are already familiar with that. Yeah, let me know what you think. Okay, I'm done, Mr. Alim, Bubu.
Thank you, Prof. Febri, for the discussions and for the presents the materials to all the students. And for the students, do you have a questions regarding to democracy assistance and the material that Pak Febri already explained?
I have a response, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
About the budgeting from Soros company. I heard about the Soros company, but I just see the budgeting and I see that information and pairs, if I'm not mistaken, is the laws budgeting. I mean, right now information is very important, sir. We believe in Google more than our parents self. Why the information budgeting is so low?
Is so low.
Yes,
Budgeting from OSF, or I don't know.
the USF, sir. I see it
OSF.
in
OSF.
last slide. Yes.
Okay. See, from the Soros.
Yes.
Let me check again. Journalism and information, so only 5%. I think it's yes. Sometimes I have no correct or certain answer to that, but you have to understand that sometimes organizations or agency like OSF, they not OSF, like agency government like USAID, yeah, because they are very accountable. Like I mentioned, because it money came from the people tax and budget from the national budget, and it has accountable. They have to have specific plan, yeah, and to define the sectors that they want to work with. It's different from the OSF. OSF is the private foundations by the Soros, which is mean that it's not accountable to the government in US, or it not use the people tax money. Understand that? I don't know whether OSF issue the specific priorities for the sectors, or it depends on how, or depend on how many proposals they get from the civil society organizations. Maybe they receive less journalism informations issues from the organizations, from the CEO. So I have no certain answer to that. Yeah? But I think informations, it's always related to the freedom of speech, freedom of informations. But sometimes we can also categorize that as the part of the openness, democratic practice, and human rights as well. So I don't know. I have no certain answer to that. But yeah, I think it's all related. Journalism, information related to the freedom of speech, which is mean that it's part of the human right as well. It's part of the democratic practice as well. So we must do a specific research on the OSF if you want to know about that. My objective for this class today is only give introduction to the what is democracy assistance. Yeah? I've done some research on these topics, but not specifically on the OSF. Yeah? Of course, the figures is always changed. Maybe in the 2020 budget sectors, I don't know. Yeah? Maybe journalism and information sector is increasing. Yeah? But we have to look, because this figure is only for 2019. Okay, any other?
Okay, from the students.
Or maybe, if I can add, maybe OSF don't want to give much money to the journalism and information sector, because other agencies like Fredrik Norman or Steve Tunjen from government in 2009, they give a priority to that issues. Let's say that you know that Steve Tunjen give priority to journalism and information as their main issue to tackle in 2009, and they will give money to specifically to NGOs who work with the journalism and information issue. So OSF, they just what you call it, made a division. They because they know that other agencies working on that issues, so they choose to focus on other issues. Maybe that's one that can answer your question as well.
Okay. For other students, do you have a questions, reactions, or comments?
I'm just wondering, is Pak Effendi was there for the whole time? I thought you were leaving.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Febri. While waiting for student response, yeah, I just wanna add some information. The trend after the reform era in Indonesia. I mean, in 1998, after the fall of Suharto, we experienced there are a lot of international donor came to Indonesia, and this contribute to the rise of civil society organization from national level to the village level. We have a lot of organization because national NGOs or CSO need the local partner to make the money from the international donor can be implemented. And today we experience most of international donor right now tend to put work together with government instead of civil society for today, like Ford Foundation, UNDP, IMF, the biggest one, yeah, World Bank. They now work hand in hand with the government, and we might say that the existence of civil society is quite marginalized by the situation. So, what does it mean? I think the practice of civil society organization right now in Indonesia is not really what to say, able to participate in the real political decision making. For example, in the case of omnibus law, Pak Febri, we
Yes.
have a lot of research based on NGOs perspective, activists, and so on and so forth. But I think the government stay based on their own interests. So what we experience today in Indonesia, something like the disengagement of government with civil society organization, practically and also politically. So this contribute to the what to say, ya apa ya in bahasa ya, keberadaan NGO itu kelihatan, tetapi perannya tidak signifikan. Perannya tidak banyak membantu on behalf of people interest, for example, because government with their donor probably right now they have also local facilitator, local broker to make their own business. This can be, I think, from SBY period also have the relatively similar mode of political practice, like what PNPM, Mandiri, what else? Now PKH. PKH also funded by international donor, right? PNPM from World Bank, and then what else? I think in the sector of education and also health assistant or what else? There are many. Apa ya? Tendensinya itu pemerintah dengan donor asing itu ya jalan, mereka sudah confident untuk berjalan sendiri gitu dengan logis yang mereka punya gitu. Sementara NGO-NGO yang organik, civil society organization that really have the good relationship with the people interest, it's something like not get trust from the government. Maybe this part of my opinion, Pak Febri, but yeah, we try to put our understanding in a very empirical basis for the student or for the future research from student project Mas Bubu.
Okay, thank you, Pak David. Very good contribution to our discussion. Do we still have a time? But I'm sure that now is 4:02 here in Malaysia time, 3:02. 3:02.
Yes.
We're supposed to finish our class, right? But just want to add some little bit. Maybe I just speak in Indonesia for this one. Memang prioritas dana asing sebetulnya kepada negara yang dalam masa transisi. Macam seperti kita lihat tadi dibangkitkan oleh Pak Effendi, Pak David, Indonesia banyak ya, dana asing masuk selepas reformasi, selepas kejatuhan Soeharto. Dan kita lihat pemilu 99, selain partai politik yang bertambah, LSM juga bertambah. Untuk salah satu sektor saja, misalnya pemerhati pemilu atau pemantau pemilu. Ada JPPR waktu itu, apa lagi? Komite pengawas pemilu, independen KPPI,
Forum Rektor,
JPPR dan sebagainya. Kemudian memang sepertinya sampai kepada SBY, sampai pemilihan presiden secara langsung, melihat bahwa proses pendemokrasian itu semakin menguat. Nah, biasanya pendana asing akan melihat bahwa kalau sudah melalui fase tertentu yang pendemokrasian sudah terkonsolidasi, maka mereka tidak akan memprioritaskan lagi. Maka dari itu memang sebuah negara yang dianggap demokratik susah sekali untuk LSM-nya untuk mendapatkan dana asing, ya? Karena menganggap mereka sudah mampu mandiri. Ini berbeda dengan negara-negara yang masih di dalam konflik, masih mengalami banyak masalah segala macam. Dan ya tentu saja kita tahu Indonesia sekarang selepas pemilu 2019 atau selepas beberapa tahun terakhir ini ada penurunan di dalam demokrasinya kan. Nah, sementara memang menurunnya jumlah yang diberikan karena memang negara asing tidak menganggap Indonesia sebagai prioritas lagi. Mungkin mereka larinya ke Bangladesh atau ke Sri Lanka dan segala macam negara-negara yang miskin, yang dianggap masih tidak demokratik, masih perlu dibantu. Jadi ini juga dialami oleh LSM di Malaysia karena Malaysia ini sudah dianggap sebagai negara yang tidak lagi bukan negara dunia ketiga lagi, jadi tidak menjadi prioritas sehingga memang LSM di sini juga banyak ini. Nah, bagi mereka yang lama terlibat di dalam dunia LSM tahu perkembangan ini, akhirnya apa? Peralihan isu di dalam perjuangan mereka. Saya ambil contoh tokoh macam Haris Merdeka Sirait. Dari tahun 94, 90-an dia bergerak dalam bidang perburuhan dan segala macam, sekarang bergerak dalam bidang anak. Bidang kampanye hak-hak anak. Kan jauh itu kan. Maknanya ada, karena sekarang buruh mungkin bukan lagi prioritas pendana asing, tetapi mungkin dia mendapat celah, belum ada LSM yang mengangkat isu anak. So, kalau saya angkat isu ini, maka akan jadi saya boleh dapat dana lah begitu. Kan contohnya begitu. Kalau zaman dulu 90-an memang isu buruh juga belum banyak. Tapi selepas reformasi kan banyak serikat-serikat buruh muncul dan segala macam, dan isu buruh bukan lagi prioritas. Mungkin dana asing sedikit ke situ. Jadi mencari orang yang bersifat karir di dalam bidang LSM, cari isu apa lagi nih. Mungkin banyak yang orang-orang yang terlibat di dalam isu LGBT, mungkin mereka sebelumnya terlibat dalam isu-isu yang lain juga. Jadi ya ada yang komen di chat, sebagian ada yang berbasis funding bukan idealisme, tapi ada juga yang berbasis idealisme ya. Itu jadi bergantung kepada LSM. Banyak, ada ratusan LSM yang ada di Indonesia ini, motivasinya macam-macam. Tapi kita tahu, kita boleh identifikasi, kita boleh periksa track record-nya. Di Jogja banyak sekali LSM yang sangat idealis, Pak ya. Banyak sekali saya tahu idealis, dan mereka tahu bahwa sebetulnya pendanaan asing ini menjerat juga, gitu. Kadang menjerat diri mereka sendiri karena tidak bebas dan sebagainya. Oke, sekian dari saya. Kami kembalikan kepada Pak Alim dan Pak David Effendi.
Thank you, Pak Febri.
Sama-sama, Pak.
Ya.
Ini untuk semua mahasiswa juga ya. Kita tidak kesempatan lagi untuk bertemu selepas ini.
Ya.
Mungkin saya tidak tahu kalau kerjasama ini masih bisa lanjut. Mungkin tahun depan ada peluang lagi. Atau kalau misalnya situasi COVID kita sudah bisa bergerak lintas negara, mungkin saya sangat ingin lah berkunjung ke UMY atau karena kita ada MOU Pak ya, di antara UMY dengan USM. Ya,
kalau enggak pandemi biasanya ini sudah exchange ini.
Ya.
Semester 4 ini, semester 4 Mas Bubu ya yang exchange ya?
Sekarang ada semester 4, 5 dan 6, Pak.
Oke, kalau enggak pandemi barangkali mereka sebagian akan sudah sedang di USM. Ya. Oke, thank you Pak Febri.
Sama-sama, Pak.
Ya, mudah-mudahan kita bisa ketemu lagi dalam kesempatan yang lain. Terima kasih Mas Bubu dan Mbak Adiba sudah mengorganize visiting lecture untuk 2 kali pertemuan. Terima kasih sekali lagi Pak Febri. Kami tunggu kapan kesempatan bisa.
Kita masih berhubungan Pak ya. Kita sudah berkenalan di WhatsApp, berkenalan di Facebook.
Oke.
Email juga nanti masih bisa kolaborasi.
Ya, terima kasih Pak Febri sudah mengenalkan mahasiswa untuk perjalanan panjang gerakan civil society di Indonesia ya. Tentu saja mereka masih SD tahun 98 atau masih TK. Apa belum lahir. Tentu saja itu pengetahuan yang sangat penting. Terima kasih sekali lagi Pak Febri. Saya kembalikan untuk menutup.
Oke, sampai ketemu lagi ya semua ya.
Terima kasih.
Sukses ya.
Ya, sampai ketemu lagi. Wabarakatuh.